Welcome back to another strange and mysterious podcast. Of course, I'm one of your hosts, G. Introduce yourself, sir.
I am Define 999, and I don't fuck around. If I see a ghost, I'm going after it. If I see a cryptid, I'm going after it. I see a UFO, I'm begging to be zoomed and beamed up, Scotty. I'm like, beam me up, Scotty. I'll be your willing host.
Hey, who are you going to call, Ghostbusters? Hell no.
You're going to call Define 999, baby.
Damn right. Well, we have a good one tonight. We have an old school UFO crash in Aurora, Texas. Now, you had said a little bit earlier that you had heard of this. What do you have heard about this crash?
I don't remember the exact details. I just remember that it had some stuff that was sort of similar to the Roswell incident. You could compare and contrast it a little bit. I don't remember the time frame. When it was in the 60s, 70s?
No, it was a long time ago. It was in 1898. So,
okay. Wow.
What makes this kind of interesting also, it was kind of before really people were talking about UFOs and spacemen, right? And this was written inside their paper. Also, kind of the people that used to live by there, some strange things were happening to them. And they were getting kind of messed up because of what happened from a long time ago. But I'll touch into that a little bit of going into this, okay?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's do it.
That may just contain the most important grave in the world. My quest today brings me to a small town in northern Texas. This is Aurora, Texas, a small, legendary town about an hour away from Dallas with a very mysterious past.
Yep.
By now, you're probably asking yourself, what in the world happened here? Now, if you know your UFO history up until this point, there had only been UFO sightings. However, this is the first documented UFO crash in history, the Aurora incident. That's right, in 1897, a UFO crashed right here in this town. Legend has it that the UFO lost control and hit a nearby windmill and crashed into pieces. So, this being the first time in history that this has ever happened, nobody knew what to do. The town's
What's interesting too is that the way they described the UFO was cigar-shaped.
Right? Which we've heard of plenty of cigar-shaped sightings.
Definitely, and this is before aviation, correct?
Yep, this is before they were used to things flying in the sky, except for birds, and in their mind they would think of angels.
Angels. All right, so let's check this out.
People gathered up the pieces of the UFO and threw them down a well. Now, this story is about to get a lot more mysterious. The townspeople even found as what they described as a little man from space. And he was definitely not human, according to their description. In today's terms or lingo, this was an alien. So, what would any good townspeople do? That's right, they buried the alien right here in this cemetery. They even gave the alien a proper name as well, Ned. This made the local...
What? Hey, they couldn't come up with a better name of Ned? Really?
Ned.
Yeah, Ned. They couldn't come up with a better name?
Oh, my God.
So these are some of the reports of where the UFO happened and actually where they buried the alien. This is actual from the newspaper.
So did they go dig it up?
All right, so it'll get into that. Watch.
Local news, newspapers, and even made the newspaper in Dallas. Now, this was the 1800s, so that was a big deal. This was the first documented UFO crash in history. Check this marker out. The legend that a spaceship crashed nearby in 1897 and the pilot killed in the crash was buried here. All right, let's go see if we can find this grave. Like I said, this could be the most important grave in the world.
Now they go hunting for the grave. So what I think is interesting is that not only was there a newspaper clipping back in 1897 about what had happened to this, person, this little person, Ned, right? But they actually buried the creature, right? That's crazy. Can you imagine those folk seeing this stuff back then before airplanes, right?
Yeah, because they would think it was like an angel or a demon, or they would have very almost biblical or mythological understandings of it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And look, here's the marker that they actually say that this is where the alien was found. So let's see.
Rest in peace, Ned. We love Ned. Here it is. There is an alien.
Hey, was Ned a cokehead? Ned liked drugs.
Don't fuck with him, dude. He liked this powder. He liked a little go-go powder now and again.
Hey, he probably got fucked up the night before and crashed the shit. He's like, drunk. Man, these earth beings know how to get down.
Hey, he tried some of that Texas whiskey.
Right? That shit's hitting tonight.
Yeah, it hit him all right. Fucking killed him.
Right?
Buried in the cemetery. As you can see.
I was going to say, why is the marker so odd?
Well,
like a fucking boulder.
Well, there was an actual headstone and stuff, but it was supposedly dug up by the government once they found out about this story, right? And they took the headstone away.
People have paid their respects to the alien and left a lot of offerings on the grave. I will do the same. I don't have much with me today to leave, so I'm going to leave an Adventures with Ed Huffman decal.
Hey, I think Ned would probably like candy instead. I'm just saying.
Yeah, the decal's kind of lame, bro.
I agree.
There you go. That is the most important grave in the world. And as always, in any cemetery, we pay our respects. Rest in peace. Now, if you're like me, you're probably thinking, why has someone not dug this grave up? Well, the law in Aurora, Texas states you cannot exhume a grave unless you notify the next of kin, which is absolutely impossible in this case. Plus, my research leads me to believe that this alien was buried in this cemetery, however, under a different grave to keep the crazy people from actually doing this. I hope you enjoyed this mysterious legend of Texas. And you're probably asking yourself, I wonder if there really is an alien buried in the Aurora Cemetery. Well, the only people that know for sure were the people who were actually there in the 1800s and witnessed this incident.
Furthermore, what had happened before, when they dumped all of that stuff, this spaceship inside that well,
yeah,
there was a family that was living there. Because I had heard about the Aurora crash, a while back, and it was in one of those paranormal series on TVs, right? Like the show.
Yeah.
And they talked about this family that all the families that drank from that well started to get really bad arthritis and different types of radiation poisoning diseases.
Like what?
They were getting really bad scoliosis and their fingers were crinkling up. When they checked the well, that had a higher elevated background of radiation. So whatever that material that they dumped into the water people were still drinking it without knowing.
Like
and they were
years
getting
later?
sick. Years later.
So is that well still there?
I want to say they filled it up and they cemented it over. But that's kind of how I knew about the Aurora crash.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I think it was a really interesting report of one of the very first alien crashes that we know about that was documented.
Yeah. So when they wrote about it in the paper, what did they say? That it was a man from space?
We can actually pull it up.
Yeah, let's pull it up.
Let's see if we can get a better
Sudden
look.
appearance of the airship, which had been sailing through the country. It was traveling due north and much nearer the Earth than ever before. Evidently, some of the machinery was out of order, for it was making a speed of only 10 or 12 miles an hour and gradually settling towards the Earth. It sailed directly over the public square. When it reached the north part of town, collided with the tower of Judge Proctor's windmill and went to pieces with a terrific explosion, scattering debris over several acres of ground, wrecking the windmill and water tank and destroying the judge's flower garden. Oh, God. The pilot of the ship is supposed to have been the only one on board, and while his remains are badly disfigured, enough of the original has been picked up to show that he was not an inhabitant of this world. Mr. T.J. Weems, the United States Signal Service officer at this place and an authority on astronomy, gives it as his opinion that he was a native of the planet Mars. Papers found on his person evidently record of his travels and written in some unknown hieroglyphics. It cannot be deciphered. The ship was too badly wrecked to form any conclusion as to its construction or motive power. It was built of an unknown metal resembling a mixture of aluminum and silver, and it must have weighed several tons. The town is full of people today who are viewing the wreck. And holy shit, that's crazy.
Isn't that interesting that they actually wrote about this when it happened?
Because back then the government didn't have enough. It couldn't be everywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
The United States government. So they had no way to control the information like in Roswell.
Yeah.
That was immediately, and in today's modern day and age, if an alien craft were to crash, I think the government would easily be able to just cover it up. I mean, they're connected in so many ways. But that's a trip.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of the very few actual documented alien crashes that was before all of the government cover up. So You're right. It was just, they saw it happen. They wrote it down about how they felt. They probably could, relate this to a Martian man because they could see Mars and the moon, and they figured that's probably where he came from, right? Because they didn't have a context of an airplane.
And I think in I'm trying to remember the very first science fiction stories.
Jules Verne, right?
But what year was that? Was Jules Verne?
I'm not sure. Hey, let's see.
I'm just wondering if they even had the concept of, if people even had the concept of people living on other planets at that time. But that's interesting that the guy said, I think he's from Mars.
Yeah.
So he knew that it wasn't whatever they were looking at, they figured wasn't of this Earth.
There was a Jules Verne called From the Earth to the Moon.
What year was that?
Let's see.
It might have been around that time, the turn of the century, I think.
That's what I'm thinking it was too. But, this was just basically human beings trying to interpret something that they didn't really have an idea for, but through novel or through their media, quote unquote, right? They tried to make sense of it.
I wonder what happened. So they threw all the debris down a well? Yeah, if they said if it was a couple tons, there's no way they could have done that.
They threw pieces of it. They probably just buried some of it.
I wonder if that material is findable.
Oh,
So where did you get
1865.
Okay, then they were already kind of getting the idea at that time then that, there could be people on the moon, and you know what I mean? So where did you get the idea that the government came and dug up the grave?
So in the special that I had seen, and I don't remember exactly what special it was, they had talked about government coming in and actually looking for the remains and digging it up and removing the headstone.
And when was that?
I want to say it was during the 1950s or 60s.
Huh.
But, unlike in Roswell, because the Roswell incident really is what started everything off, right?
Yeah.
The coined phrase of flying saucer was coined by people seeing, these skipping, plates or what look like saucers, right?
Yeah.
But even back then, right, they were seeing weird stuff. For example, like the Foo Fighters, right? They would see these UFOs that would follow either the Nazis or the Americans, right? And that's what they called them, Foo Fighters. So there was already starting to be somewhat of an interest and an acknowledgement that something had been going on. But what's cool about this story, it predates it, and it gives you evidence written by the people of their time.
Yeah, why would journalists lie? Journalists don't make
at
up
that
stories.
time. They didn't have an agenda.
They didn't have any agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Now they did have what did they call them? Airship dirigibles. That's all they knew about, at that time. They knew about ballooning, about I forget what you call the hobby of ballooning. Airship, no, I don't know, but they did have airships.
Mm-hmm.
Even in the Civil War, they had airships,
the Zeppelin.
balloons. The Zeppelin, they would go up to look and see if they could see the enemy. So the military had been screwing around with airships.
Mm-hmm.
And there had been airship technology at that time. They hadn't figured out, I don't think they had figured out, the gases type airships. So I believe the Zeppelins were filled with hydrogen. I think they were still using hot air. I think they were still using coal fired stuff or whatever. But that's a trip, dude.
Yeah, and I thought it was really important because Roswell is always, always on television and everybody knows it around the world. But I think this case right here of the Aurora crash didn't have any type of agenda to it.
Yeah.
This basically just told you the facts according to those people of what they saw prior to aviation that just wrote down what happened, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's concreted in their newspaper at the time, 1897.
Yeah, you can't argue with it.
So I just thought this was a really cool story.
There's no agenda. There's no anything. It just that kind of. I mean, that's the best. That's the best kind of firsthand accounts that you can get. Definitely.
In a future episode, I would really love to touch on Roswell specifically because you worked at the
Roswell Daily Record.
The Roswell Daily Record. I definitely would love to touch more on that stuff because they say we got a lot of technology from Roswell. So let's see.
You want to hear something funny?
What's up?
So I was in Roswell for the UFO festival.
Nice.
So I was thinking I should have tried to do a strange and mysterious video review or something.
Hey, next year we should go.
Next year we should go. But I was in Roswell. And my son was driving. We were driving there, and my son, when he thinks of grays, he thinks of Fire in the Sky grays. You know what I mean? Skinny arms, skinny legs.
Good movie, by the way.
Oh, excellent movie.
Oh, and Communion. You seen Communion?
Communion, I think so.
Oh, that's such a good movie. You got to check Communion out.
But anyway, so we're driving into town, and all the businesses have alien stuff everywhere and everything. And so I guess there was an artist that had gone around making alien like wood carvings for businesses and other stuff. But it's woods. You can't make them skinny.
Yeah.
Right? So Sebby goes, Dad, the aliens in Roswell are thick. And I was like, what are you talking about? He says, they're thick. They're thick, Dad. I was like, oh yeah, they've got big fat asses and big bodies because they're eating tamales and enchiladas all day long.
That green chili.
Yeah. What do you think? These aliens are going to keep their small figures in Roswell with popos and
all-subs? You can't go wrong with
all-sub burritos. I mean,
chimneys.
Come on. They're not going to keep their figures, man. They're going to be thick. They're going to have fat asses and fatter bodies. But yeah.
Got that alien ass.
Oh,
from outer space, out of this world.
You should see that Roswell alien ass, dude. It's thick. They're thick down there, dude. It's because they're rice and bean fed.
Right? They're right.
But it was just the funniest thing because I think in his mind, he was expecting tons of skinny aliens everywhere. It's fucking thick in Roswell, bro.
There's an interesting case in the future we may talk about because it's one of my favorite pharaohs from Egypt is King Akhenaten. And King Akhenaten, he was awesome because he said, don't carve me like everyone else. Carve me for how I looked. And what do you look like? Yeah. He got a big old beer belly, right?
Yeah,
he had this
skinny and a big old belly. Yeah, and the standards of beauty were different. And, it's almost like Akhenaten also. I've always thought Akhenaten went in there and said, man, all these different gods and shit, it's all bullshit. There's just one God. And it's that glowing disc in the sky. Yeah. He's like, that's it. All this other stuff, it's just made up bullshit so that the priest class can live nice pampered lives. He was like, fuck that. We're gonna worship that thing because that thing, it powers everything.
It's the giver of life.
Yeah. Yeah, Akhenaten's pretty rad dude. And
he's one of my
Nefertiti, his wife, was supposed to be a pretty amazing woman herself.
Yeah. But that's another kind of alien thing that I would like to get into. But anyways, I just thought this story was awesome. And that's cool. Been it. Any final thoughts?
Final thoughts. If you find an alien body and you decide to bury him and give him a name, pick a cool name, man.
I agree.
Don't call him Ned. Call him like, Beelzebub or Bartholomew or something cool,
Fly
man.
Guy.
Yeah, Fly Guy or Mr. Gray or something cool, right? Don't call him Ned. That's my final thought.
I agree. My final thought is when, you have a visitor like that, make sure that you don't get him that candy that will fuck him up. So he wrecks his goddamn spaceship. Make sure he has a place to stay and he's all right. You can't do,
give him a place to sleep.
Yeah, can't be drinking and driving.
If you're going to party him down, like send him on his way with his spaceship sober, right? Not blasted out of his mind on, freaking mobster lines of coke. You don't want to do that. He's going to crash his spaceship and you're going to create an international incident.
You're damn right.
Party responsibly.
All right, that's been our episode. We'll catch you on the flip side. Peace. Peace, peace.